Welcome to Divorce Explained, the podcast where we answer your questions and navigate the process of divorce together.
So we have some news in Canada, and it involves divorce.
It involves divorce and our Prime Minister.
That's right. And so many Canadians have now heard that Justin and Trudeau are going their separate ways while he is the Prime Minister of Canada. Isn't that weird?
It is. And I read somewhere that he and his father, I think, are the only prime ministers in our history that will be sitting prime ministers who are divorced, assuming Trudeau goes through with the divorce and it gets finalized while he's in office.
So when the Americans say they've got scandals coming up the wazoo, we actually can compete with our American friends with what goes on the north side of the border.
Yes, definitely. And I had heard as well with the day that they announced it, there was like a whole big Twitter eruption, and Justin was being named one of the world's most eligible bachelors and all this kind of stuff. And I think today we'll be able to chat about maybe some of the things that he should be keeping in mind and Sophie should be keeping in mind, because this is obviously a very high profile divorce. And while some of the rules or do's and don'ts in a high profile divorce would apply in any divorce, I think they're even sometimes more important to follow when you're in a high profile situation.
So to regale and entertain our viewers, what Leanne and I are going to do is we're going to pretend that we represent Sophie and Justin. And if it's okay with you, I'll take Justin.
That's fine. That's you can take Justin.
Thank you. So let's pretend, because it's certainly not true that I represent Justin Trudeau, but let's pretend for the purposes of this IG Live that he has come to me and said, Steve, we just can't stay together any longer. We need to split up. Help me out. Help me navigate this in a way that causes me the least amount of negative publicity, the least damage to my children, the greatest respect for Sophie, and quite frankly, honors the Canadian tradition of doing things properly. And more importantly, Justin says to me, I'm in office now, therefore I recognize there's celebrity associated with my name, but I won't be in office forever, and I don't want this to be the final blemish on my record before I completed my term as the leader of Canada. So Justin says this to me and says, you, Steve, are the smartest guy, and help me out. By the way, for Sophie, Leanne is the smartest woman, smartest person. But we're not there yet. We're still on me being the smart guy. So I say to Justin, let's start. Are you sure? You mean you can't work things out? Have you tried this and that and that and this? And I've got a long list of thises and that's. Because at the end of the day, there was a moment in time, possibly more than one, when Sophie was the center of his world. And then there was another moment when he decided that he wanted to create a child with Sophie. And then another one. And then another one. And then they decided to become public servants together and be on the world stage. And quite frankly, I would even ask Justin, how much of a role did Sophie play in your political career? And is it possible that the investments that each of you have made in your political life might very well be the cause of the strife in your marriage right now? And do you recognize that everything passes, even your leadership of Canada will one day finish? And when it does, you're going to have a very different life as a private citizen in Canada. And is this your destiny? Is this the gift you want to give your children? Is this the memory you want to give your mother and your father? And what about Canadians? I mean, Justin, this is not just about you. There's a lot of other people involved. Convince me that you've done everything in your power, that you have given up as much as you can, that you have bent and been flexible as much as you can before you've made the decision to separate. So you might ask viewers, why would I do that? Am I not giving away my billable hour by trying to convince someone to do that? The answer is yes, I am giving away my billable hour. Don't worry, clients, viewers. There's a whole long list of other people other than Justin who are splitting up today. So we have no shortage of clients that need our help. But when they do, they are coming for advice. They are coming for impartiality. They are coming for expertise. And sometimes they're coming to hear what nobody else tells them. And that's what we can do within the confines of a solicitor and client privileged communication. We can say things to clients that even their best friends and family aren't telling them. And sometimes the best friends and family are the ones that are cheerleading them on. In other words, whatever they do is right. And sometimes the other spouse is totally wrong. Well, that may not be the conversation with me or with Leanne, because we have to be objective. But on top of all of that, Leanne and I have a statutory duty. We have a duty that we took under oath when we became a licensed lawyer in Ontario, which, by the way, includes Ottawa, to advise separated spouses on the benefits of remaining married and resolving their differences through some process which could be therapeutic. And I would not shirk that responsibility for a moment. I don't with every client, and I wouldn't with my pseudo client, Justin Trudeau. I would start on that. And then only if I was utterly convinced, and which effectively means he needs to be utterly convinced, because I can tell you, about a third of the people that I do this to think twice about whether they want to proceed or not. And that's okay, because they can always come back to me in a week or a month or a year and say, I gave it a try. It just didn't work out. And that happens. Mm-hmm. But there are people that come to me and they're just not sure. And whether we like it or not, pop culture or otherwise, people think that, you know what, if I'm splitting up, I got to talk to a lawyer. So they do. That's the first call. Not their counselor, not their therapist, not the friend that's going to tell them that they're stupid, but the friend that's going to tell them that they're right because they never liked their spouse. And so people sometimes look for advice from the people that they know what they're going to get in terms of that advice, and sometimes it's not the objective advice that they want. So that's just on the subject of separation and the decision to separate. And before I continue with the law, I want to hear from you. What would you even think to tell Sophie? And by the way, give me two answers. She wants to leave him, and two, he wants to leave her. What are you going to do?
Well, a lot of my answer, and certainly my starting point, would be similar to what you've already mentioned. I would want to canvass whether the marriage is salvageable, and what the reasons are, whether it's coming from her or whether it's because he's conveyed to her that he wants to leave. And one of the things I would really want to stress and point out to Sophie Trudeau is that, is the situation, has it become intolerable, or whatever's driving the desire to separate and divorce? Is it something that would change when he's not in office? Because, him being in office is not probably not a permanent situation, although I don't know, maybe he will just be in office indefinitely. I don't know at this point. But, I'm going to assume that at some point that's going to come to an end, and he's already had a few terms, so it may be coming to an end, sooner than, at the start of his prime ministership. And so, if the things that are driving the desire to separate and divorce are coming from the pressures of leading this public life and him being prime minister and the stresses of that and things that she's having to do as the wife of the prime minister and all of that, then one of the things I would want to stress to her is that that's not a permanent situation, and that will be coming to an end. And so, is what's there something that is salvageable, that you can work on and build on and rebuild and all of that. So I would want to talk to her, about that in particular. If she's the one driving the divorce, I would especially want to hear what her reasons are so that I can, assess, like, is this something that, maybe I'm not a marriage counselor and I don't profess to be, but, is it something that's fixable? Have they tried marriage counseling? Do they need a referral to a marriage counselor or therapist? Or, what are the issues? Is there a substance abuse issue going on? Is there, what's driving the desire, for her to want to leave him? And, are there other solutions to it? So I would want to chat with her about that. If he's the one driving it, and, I would want to make sure that she understands that all it takes is one person. So, I've met with many clients over the years where the other person has left them and the other person is driving it, and they really, really, really want to stay in the marriage and stay in the relationship. And, sometimes I have to be that unfortunate cold dose of reality that, your partner is leaving and this is happening and you can't bury your head in the sand. You need to accept that this is happening, and you need to get supports in place so that you are supported and can make smart decisions on what are going to be, some of the most, if not the most important areas of your life, your children, your finances, where you live, all of those sorts of things. So I'd want to make referrals to her to, if she does need supports, because I think that it's really important that people going through this process, if they need a therapist, if they need a coach, if they need a financial advisor, sometimes people have got their taxes done and they might need a referral to an accountant. So, any supports that I think she needs, I would want to provide the referrals, and, see where she's at then in terms of proceeding to the next stage, which would be actually moving ahead with the separation and divorce.
Yes, very good advice. And I'll tell you, one of the things that occurred to me when I heard the news break is, why now? Why not in a year? Why not after he leaves office? Why now? And what duty does he have to the Canadians with respect to him keeping his finger on the pulse of the nation, as opposed to being preoccupied with his personal life and his divorce? Because you and I both know, Leanne, our clients, for the most part, are disabled when they're going through divorce. Many people are unfocused, they're not productive, they're dealing with sorrow, not to mention the fact that they've got a plan and a different way of living, whether it's in terms of their residences and their children and all of the things that are associated with being a parent. So why now? And why can't this wait until another period in time? Which then connects me with the legal analysis, which is, do you understand that the date of separation determines the valuation of all your assets and your debts, and might also serve as the beginning date for the purposes of support? And that's an important decision because, quite frankly, if Sophie were to come to me and said, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I need to leave him, and he's 2 years away from leaving office, I would explain to Sophie that right now he's earning about $500,000 a year. This is how much you're going to get in child and spousal support. But when he leaves office, he's going to enter into the private sector and make probably 5 times, possibly 10 times that income. And you settle now, you may not be able to access that new income. Wouldn't you want to have the lifestyle that you thought you were going to get when you married Justin Trudeau, the son of Pierre? And choosing your date of separation is a very important question. because choosing it right now when he's on the government's payroll at about $500,000 Canadian, whereas he might be earning anywhere from $5 to $10 million a year, with speaking engagements and book tours and being called to various universities as a lecturing professor. That's a very different place financially for Sophie to be in than leaving him right now. So the why now to Justin, the why now to Sophie has very different analyses, some of which is duty to the public, some of which is financially driven. And I would want to dig into that to understand why this client, Justin or Sophie, is in my office saying now, because I've already covered the why. Now I'm going to ask why now, and then we're going to go to the next level.
Oh, and I think that's a very important point. And that's something that went through my mind as well, the why now. And of course, I have no inside knowledge of any client, but it made me think that things had to be pretty intolerable from whoever is driving this decision, because otherwise, why wouldn't they wait it out and wait, at least from Sophie's perspective, why, for the reasons you just mentioned, Steve, the financial reasons, why wouldn't she wait it out? They could, kind of lead separate lives together, as lots of couples do, that they're still officially married, but, they don't have to spend time together except for maybe important engagements, on behalf of the country or whatever, where they're required to be together. And so the fact that they chose not to even do that, and they actually have formally announced separation, says to me that somebody is really unhappy here, and doesn't want to wait until his term is over and whatnot. And so it's interesting to, I think that there's factors there, obviously, that are making one of them incredible. Perhaps it could be both. I mean, we don't know. But at least one of them is unhappy enough that they're not willing to wait this out, for him to finish his term. And I agree with what you said, Steve. I mean, it is kind of it's a heavy distraction for him. I mean, yes, lots of people in all kinds of positions of success and power go through a divorce, and you have to juggle your job responsibilities at the same time. But as Steve and I both see, a lot of people have a lot of challenge with doing that, because it is very stressful, and it's usually protracted. It's not something that's just wrapped up in a month, and so you can be distracted for a month and then get back to things. It can go on for quite some time. And for someone who's supposed to be putting the country first, that will be a lot for him to be dealing with all at once, even if he was the one who wanted the divorce. I think that's another kind of misunderstanding that people who aren't divorced sometimes have, is you could know that divorce is the right thing, that ultimately it's going to be better for you, and still find the whole process extremely stressful and difficult.
I mean, we have other examples. We've got recent and long-standing examples of marital problems while people are in public office. But going to the highest level, I mean, just here in Toronto, we had an election for the mayor of Toronto because we had a man that was married for many years, in the eyes of the public, happily married, and had an adulterous relationship with a person that worked in his department, and he made the decision to leave office. When John Tory left office, he left the not only the city of Toronto, but quite frankly, all of Canada, scratching their head and wondering why, because there's lots of people that have committed adultery, but still go to work every day. And so how is he any different? And look what he put Toronto, or quite frankly, Ontario, through by forcing an election, some people of whom are not particularly happy with the outcome. And then we've got, from the earlier days, we've got people like Bill and Hillary Clinton with what occurred while he was in office. And so, the Monica Lewinsky scandal certainly was nobody's business, but it became everybody's business. And Donald Trump, with all of his antics, we haven't talked about Donald Trump's marital life, but that's a whole other chapter that that we probably will be able to discuss in about a year from now if and when he is elected. Is Milena by his side, or is there something that we don't know about? Because I don't know about you, I haven't seen her very much lately. And so
No.
one must query, how is that relevant in his life as a leader with the finger on the nuclear button? So we've got lots of examples, and I don't want to be harsh on our leader, but I would, as a friend, as a fellow Canadian, and as a legal advisor, I would really challenge the question, why now? And if the answer is, it's just intolerable. We have, it's a loveless relationship. We bicker all the time. We don't agree on anything. Well, I'd say two things. One, you're going to have to agree on a lot of things because you've got 3 kids together. And so, you know, they say when you give a man a hammer, everything's a nail. You know, if divorce is the answer, what's the problem? If the problem is we don't agree on our children, then you think divorce is going to change that? Nope. So the other part is, you're not living in a 700 square foot condominium on the water. You're living on Sussex Drive. She could take one wing, you could take the other. You're not even in Canada for half the year. And then when you are in Canada, you're in briefings. What is it that you can't do while she is still on paper your wife, or he your husband, without really shaking up the national fabric? Anyway, so that's it for my rant on Justin's poor choice of the timing of his divorce. But let's move on to the next question, which is how? And I have to say, I just finished watching about an hour of the Netflix show called Bradgelina.
Oh.
Whoa. That is the answer to not that way.
Exactly.
So the question is how? Not that way. You do not, while on a plane with your spouse, call the police to have them arrest him or her upon the plane's landing in the airport of your home country and be arrested and questioned on behavior targeting your children in the public specter. And that didn't get any better over the course of their breakup. And they, I think from what I understand, they're still in court. So that's what not to do. So I guess one would say the fact that Sophie and Justin came on the spotlight, made a public announcement that gave us no details as to who wanted this, why they wanted this, and how this is going to affect his day job, I guess to some extent is a check mark for keeping things confidential and not in the public eye. But
I would agree with that, but I do think his PR people maybe dropped the ball a little bit there, in that I think there should have been some sort of commentary about how, you know, us Canadians don't need to be concerned that this will detract or distract him from his duties as prime minister. He's committed to, you know, being prime minister of Canada. There should have been something, I think, addressing that came out at the same time. And as far as I'm aware, I mean, maybe there wasn't, I missed it, but as far as I'm aware, there wasn't. And so I do think that's something, you know, it's just like, yes, it's a private matter, but he's a very public person with public duties. And so it is our business as Canadians, how this is going to affect him on some level. We're not necessarily entitled, we're not entitled to know all the nitty gritty details of what went on or what, you know, some of that information, but we are entitled to some basic information about how this is going to affect him, because he has a duty to all of us as the leader of the country. And, you know, so acting like this is just a private matter between him and Sophie and, you know, give them some privacy and whatnot, I don't think that really fully properly addresses what needs to be addressed.
It's a very good point. Listen, when people hire us, They don't really know nor care too much about all of the different responsibilities that we have in our personal lives or any sort of challenges that we face. When someone's going through a divorce or someone requires surgery, they expect their lawyer or their doctor to bring their A game to the work that needs to be done to help that person's legal or medical health. And so we as Canadians expect our Prime Minister to bring his A game and not be distracted. And yes, you're right, Leanne, this is something that I think the PR machine for Sussex did not cover. And they may. And quite frankly, I think that this is going to make for yet another Netflix show in a couple of years from now. The falling apart of the Justin Sophie Trudeau union. I mean, we've heard stories about his father, and at some point, I'm sure we'll hear stories about Justin as well. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we learn things that we did not know occurred between the two of them, as opposed to just some old vanilla version of irreconcilable differences, and that's why they fell apart.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing they are doing that would be certainly my advice to either of them if they were my client is they are being tight-lipped. They're not speaking about, one another. They're not airing dirty laundry in the press. They're not doing what Angelina Jolie did to Brad Pitt. So, from that standpoint, they're handling it so far the way that a lawyer would want them to handle it. And, there's rumors circulating about affairs and things like that, but they're not weighing in on that. They're not saying anything. They're not involving themselves in gossip and all of that. And that is what exactly they should be doing.
Right. So this is a timely topic, an interesting one that provokes thought, and certainly us as lawyers wonder about a whole bunch of questions: why now, and how. There's going to be lots more questions that are going to be asked and answered over the course of the next few months and years. But I should say that on a good note, these two people have done great things for Canada. They've done great things for their family. And I expect that Justin and Sophie will continue to be positive role models, not only to Canadians and people all over the world, but role models for people that are able to politely, diplomatically, and honorably exit a relationship without causing much drama or much aggravation to each other or to those in their immediate family, specifically their children. So kudos to Justin and Sophie for divorcing collaboratively and amicably.
Yeah, I agree. They seem to be doing it the right way. And so I think that's a good example for all Canadians. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. We'll be back here again next week with another topic on our episodes of Divorce Explained.
Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Divorce Explained. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to head on over to Instagram and follow at Steve Benmor and at Leanne Townsend Life for more. And if you're looking for specific divorce services, you can visit benmor.com and leannetownsend.ca. We hope today's episode made you feel informed and inspired as you move along through your divorce journey. Tune in next week for Divorce Explained.